Welcome to Zio's station. Cale Mercer had seen a lot of strange things since joining the Terran Diplomatic Corps, but nothing quite prepared him for the spectacle that was Zio's station. The moment he stepped off the shuttle, the artificial gravity tugged at his bones in a way that reminded him of deep-sea diving back home. Overhead, translucent spires flickered with bioluminescent signs, advertising goods and services in 100 languages. Beneath his feet, the promenade buzzed with creatures of every imaginable form. He tried to keep his composure as a customs officer with 4 eyes and shimmering teal skin scanned his documentation. "First time on Zios?" the officer asked. "That obvious," Cale replied, offering a sheepish grin. "Your species always arrives wide-eyed. Try not to cause an incident." His communicator pinged with a message: "Cultural immersion begins immediately. Meet Kira of Zydonia at the Stellar Terrace." Cale squared his shoulders and set off. The Stellar Terrace was a marvel. It jutted from the station like a glass tongue, suspended in space by force fields that let diners see the starscape without being vacuumed into it. Cale spotted her instantly. Kira sat at a corner table beneath a glowing parasol. Her silver-white braids caught the ambient light like spun metal, and her skin shimmered with a deep orange hue. She was breathtaking. "You must be Cale," she said, her accent lilting. "I thought you got lost." "Just overwhelmed," Cale admitted, taking a seat. "This place is something else." "Welcome to the Sidonian Empire," she said, lifting her glass. As food was served, their conversation ranged from trade protocols to planetary music. Cale found Kira intelligent, regal, and surprisingly humorous. Then the bill arrived. "Let me check," Cale said, instinctively reaching for the payment slate. Kira's eyes widened. "What are you doing?" "Splitting the bill. Or I can get this one if you want." She looked scandalized. "Real males provide. This is insulting." Cale blinked. "Wait. I thought this was a diplomatic dinner." Kira inhaled sharply. "This was arranged through the Cultural Exchange Initiative. It is a courtship assessment." It hit Cale like a slap. He'd been set up by his own government. His ears burned as onlookers whispered. "You mean this was a date?" "A formal one, yes." They stared at each other. Emotions warred between them, confusion, anger, and a strange flicker of intrigue. "Maybe," Cale said slowly, "we should talk in private. Away from our audience." Kira's voice softened. "Your quarters or mine?" Cale hesitated. "Mine are closer." As they left the restaurant, the air between them crackled with tension. Kira leaned in. "You know, in Sidonian culture, standing by your beliefs is considered attractive." "Then I guess I'm doing okay." "You might be," she smiled slightly. "We'll see." The biological imperative. Cale's quarters in the diplomatic sector were modest but private, outfitted with the essentials: a sleeping pod, an atmospheric regulator, and a glass wall that looked out on the ever-turning starscape. Kira stepped inside without hesitation, her boots making no sound on the polished floor. She moved like someone used to command, her presence filling the space. "Nice view," she said, eyes scanning the stars. "Your people place great value on solitude." "We do," Cale replied, offering her a seat. "Especially after awkward public incidents." Kira chuckled softly, folding herself onto the low bench. "You handled it better than most would have." "I wasn't briefed," Cale said, rubbing the back of his neck. "I thought we were negotiating trade agreements, not compatibility." "For my people, the two are not so separate," Kira replied. "Alliances are stronger when they are personal. Shared interests, shared genetics." He arched a brow. "You're talking about hybridization." "Among other things. When two species are compatible on a biological and psychological level, cooperation is not only natural but desirable." Cale paced slightly, absorbing that. "So you were evaluating me. Judging whether I met some kind of evolutionary threshold." "I was observing," Kira said. "Your strength. Your scent. Your responses to challenge." Cale stopped pacing. "My scent. Sidonian females possess acute olfactory receptors. We can detect stress hormones, pheromones, metabolic markers. It's all part of the dance." Kale gave a slow, amused shake of his head. And splitting the bill. That was a disaster, huh? Kira tilted her head. It was confusing. On Zydonia, a male who cannot, or will not, provide is considered unfit. But you said standing by one's beliefs is attractive. True. Contradiction is intriguing. It makes you harder to classify. There was silence for a moment, heavy with unspoken questions. Do humans always make things this complicated? Kira asked, eyes glinting with something more than amusement. We try, Kale replied. Makes life more interesting. Kira stood, moving close. The warmth of her body reached him before she even touched him. You still believe this is only diplomacy? I believe, Kale said, voice low, that it's more than that now. Her fingers grazed his arm. Good. Because I am curious. Not just about your policies, but about your biology. He laughed. I should probably warn you. Humans are slow learners. Then it's fortunate that I have patience. The following morning was less sensual and far more official. Kale's communicator blinked with a dozen notifications, news reports about the diplomatic incident at the Stellar Terrace, a stern message from his superior, and a discreet one from the Interspecies Cultural Bureau, early stage compatibility confirmed. Proceed with caution. Kira, meanwhile, sat across from him in a loose robe, sipping from a steaming vessel of dark green liquid. So what now? Kale asked, eyes still foggy with sleep. Now we test phase 2, Kira said. The psychological imperative. Sounds ominous. It's simple. We visit my people. They assess your behavior in our environment. In return, I will undergo evaluation on Earth, should we pass the first stage. And if we fail, then we remain cultural footnotes. An amusing anecdote about incompatible biology. Kale considered that. And if we pass everything? Kira's amber eyes met his. Then we become part of the new protocol. A human-Sidonian pairing could shift political balances in multiple sectors. No pressure, Kale muttered. Kira stood and extended her hand. Come. The next shuttle to Zydonia leaves in an hour. As Kale took her hand, he realized just how deep he was already in. Not just in interstellar diplomacy, but in something far more personal. And possibly irreversible. Initiation of trials. Kale stared out the shuttle window as the great rings of Zydonia came into view, arching like liquid silver across a canvas of stars. Even from orbit, the planet looked ancient, its continents etched with sprawling biocities and glimmering power veins that pulsed with soft emerald light. The atmosphere had a faint lavender hue, filtered by the planet's dense magnetosphere. Kira stood beside him, her posture relaxed but her eyes alert. Prepare yourself, she said, placing a warm hand on his shoulder. Your presence on Zydonia will be noticed. How many humans have visited before me? He asked. None, she said simply. You are the first to undergo the trials. Kale blinked. Trials. Plural. Yes. 3. Kira stepped back as the shuttle's descent engines activated. Biological resilience. Cognitive adaptability. And emotional depth. Kale exhaled slowly. Sounds fun. Sidonian fun is rarely gentle. The welcome at the arrival chamber was formal but cold. Towering Zydonians clad in dark armor stood at attention. An elder, his skin a deep maroon and face etched with fine silver lines, stepped forward. This is the human, the elder asked, eyes flicking over Kale. Kale Mercer, Kira said. Earth's appointed liaison. Liaison or suitor, the elder asked, tone unreadable. Both, Kira replied without hesitation. Kale felt the weight of that word settle in his gut. The first trial began at dawn in the Emerald Basin, a humid, high-gravity zone known for its bioactive flora. Kale was stripped of all technology, no translator, no atmospheric regulator, no weapons. Only his wits and body. Survive until sundown, the trial overseer said. Return with the heartfruit of the Coralli vine. Before he could ask what that was, the jungle swallowed him. The next 12 hours were a blur of heat, strange sounds, and physical exhaustion. Kale battled through vines that exhaled pollen, avoided six-legged hunters camouflaged in the moss, and scaled cliffs where the rock itself writhed with microscopic life. His muscles ached. His lungs burned. But as the twin suns began to set, he found it, the coralli vine, with its pulsating crimson fruit nestled in curling tendrils. He plucked it with trembling fingers and staggered back to the extraction point. Kira met him there. Her eyes widened slightly as she saw the fruit in his hand. "You passed," she said. "Barely," he rasped. "Barely is still a victory." The second trial was quieter but no less taxing. Kale was placed in a deep neural immersion chamber, a hybrid of Sidonian and human interface tech. The purpose: simulate high-pressure decision scenarios pulled from both human and Sidonian history. He relived ancient wars, cultural collapse, diplomatic betrayals. He had to choose between loyalty and logic, peace and sacrifice. The system measured not just his choices, but the intent and emotional resonance behind them. When he emerged, hours later, Kira was waiting. "Your empathy scores were unusually high," she said. "Your logic paths, adaptive." Was that good or bad? It was, unexpected. The third trial, emotional depth, was the most dangerous of all. Kale sat across from the Circle of Truth, a council of telepathic elders who would probe his memories and emotions without filter. They would see his grief, his desires, his shame, and his dreams. He braced as the psychic field wrapped around him like a warm tide. They saw his childhood, the death of his mother. His guilt over leaving Earth. The imposter syndrome that never quite left him. They felt his growing connection to Kira, the attraction, the confusion, the respect. They withdrew after what felt like lifetimes. "You feel deeply," the head elder said. "Too deeply, perhaps." Kira stepped forward. "But he is honest. And resilient." "That may be enough," the elder replied. 2 nights later, Kale stood on a high balcony of the Sidonian capital, dressed in ceremonial robes that felt far too ornate for his comfort. Kira stood beside him, her expression unreadable. "So, did I pass?" "The council is divided," she said. "But I have the right to choose." "And what do you choose, Kira?" She turned to him. "I choose to continue." Kale exhaled. "I was hoping you'd say that." She smiled. "Then prepare yourself. Because now, we return to Earth. And your people will judge me next." Kale's grin was wry. "You're going to love New Mexico. But be warned, we don't have any floating desert clouds." "Pity," she said. "But I hear your chili is excellent." And under the twin moons of Zidonia, they stood together, no longer just envoy and alien, but something far more uncertain, and far more real. Worlds reversed. Kale had forgotten how dry Earth air felt. After weeks on Zidonia, where humidity clung like a second skin, stepping into the arid breeze of New Mexico was like walking into an oven wrapped in sandpaper. Kira didn't complain, but her sharp inhalation and squinting eyes betrayed her discomfort. "This is harsher than I expected," she said. "You'll get used to it," Kale replied, wheeling their luggage past the embassy checkpoint. "Besides, you survived a jungle trial, a psychic audit, and philosophical arguments with alien warlords. New Mexico's just sunshine and tacos." She tilted her head, intrigued. "I have yet to experience this taco." "We'll fix that." The Earth Diplomatic Corps welcomed Kira with stiff courtesy. She was assigned a liaison, Dr. Silas Mendez, a neurocultural analyst who looked like he hadn't smiled since the Mars Accords. Tall, dark-haired, and always scribbling into his neuralpad, Mendez treated Kira more like a data sample than a sentient being. "She displays elevated prefrontal activity when observing architectural asymmetry," he muttered after one of their debriefings. "Possible aesthetic divergence from human norms." Kira leaned over to Kale. "Is he always like this?" "This is him being friendly." Kale's friends didn't make things easier. When Kira joined him at a casual dinner with his colleagues, military contractors, policy wonks, and a retired lunar botanist, they fell into awkward silence as soon as she arrived. "So," one of them finally asked, "what's it like dating someone who doesn't understand sarcasm?" Kira blinked. "Sarcasm is not foreign to Zidonians. You simply lack subtlety." That shut the table up for a moment. Kira's struggles with Earth customs quickly mirrored Kale's experience on her world. The first time someone asked to split a check, she stiffened visibly. She turned to Kale that night in the privacy of their quarters. Is this ritual common? Splitting bills? Yeah. It's a fairness thing. She shook her head. On Zydonia, a male who offers shared costs is signaling disengagement. And here, a man who insists on paying can be seen as controlling. Your culture is fragmented. So's yours. Remember the 5 different ways your people interpret eye contact. She smiled despite herself. Point taken. An unanticipated challenge emerged during a joint interview with the Interstellar Network Pulse Relay. The host, a chatty Zarnian with 7 arms and a shimmering voice, asked them bluntly. Do you love each other? Kale choked on his water. Kira answered calmly. Love is a fluid term. But I respect Kale. I am drawn to him intellectually and biologically. He is capable of both empathy and challenge. And Kale, the host, turned eagerly. He hesitated, then looked at Kira. Her amber eyes met his with quiet patience. I'm still learning what love means across species, he said. But I know I want to keep learning, with her. That night, Kira paced their shared suite. She wore a human sleep robe, silk, navy, oversized, and her usual confidence was missing. Your people's expectations, they're not aligned. I am either too alien or too human. Too assertive or too distant. Too sensual or too clinical. How do you live with so many contradictions? Kale stood from the couch and crossed to her. We don't solve them, he said gently. We just hold them. The contradictions. The doubts. The sparks. And we try to build something anyway. She looked up at him. And us? Are we building something? He reached for her hand. We're building a blueprint. Messy, incomplete, but ours. The next day, Kira did something unexpected. She invited Kale's mother, a retired geologist and widow with a sharp tongue and sharper instincts, for a private tea ceremony in the embassy gardens. Mrs. Mercer returned from the meeting with red-rimmed eyes. She asked about your father, she told Kale. And she listened like she really cared. Kale blinked. She does. Mrs. Mercer nodded slowly. She's strange. But real. A week later, the Terran Council called Kale and Kira for a final review. The panel was mixed, military, political, sociological. They grilled them on intentions, compatibility, and precedent. What's the end game here? One asked. A formal alliance. Children. Cultural assimilation. Kira answered first. The end game is evolution. Through understanding. Through contact. Through challenge. Kale added, and maybe tacos. Some of the panel laughed. Some didn't. But no one objected when the approval order came through. As they walked out of the building into the dry New Mexico night, Kira leaned close. I am beginning to understand your world, Kale Mercer. Even if it still offends my sense of balance. He chuckled. And I'm starting to understand yours. Even if your mating rituals almost got me punched by a journalist. She paused. Shall we continue building? Always, he said, and took her hand as the desert wind carried the scent of mesquite and a new kind of belonging. Fusion Protocol. Months had passed since the Terran Council granted formal approval for Kale and Kira's diplomatic partnership. In that time, their story had gone from whispered novelty to full-blown interstellar case study. Articles were published. Vids dissected their interactions. Xenopsychologists ran simulations. None of that changed the fact that they still bickered over what temperature to set the habitat dome at. 25 degrees is objectively ideal for human comfort, Kale said. Zydonian neurofunction begins to degrade below 27, Kira countered, wrapped in a shimmering thermal shawl. You're wearing a climate suit. I'm sweating through my shirt. Perhaps this is a sign our species are fundamentally incompatible. Or, Kale grinned, we buy a better thermostat. They had settled into a shared residence aboard the interstellar research vessel Silva Promise, a neutral ground between their two cultures. The ship served as both laboratory and observation post, tasked with monitoring hybrid initiatives across the Galactic Alliance. As the first confirmed interspecies diplomatic pair with romantic implications, Kale and Kira had become both subjects and symbols. Their quarters were private, but not exempt from occasional observation protocols. Cameras off during intimate hours, a compromise negotiated fiercely by Kira. They may study our methods, she had said. But our pleasure is not their data. A crisis came not from outside, but from within. Kira's biochemistry had begun reacting unpredictably to prolonged exposure to human pathogens. She hadn't fallen ill exactly, but subtle signs were accumulating. Elevated neurotransmitter fluctuations. Restless sleep cycles. When Dr. Silas Mendez sent them a confidential briefing, his expression was more grave than usual. Her immune system is adapting, he said. But it's also bonding. Bonding, Kale asked. Your pheromones are acting like low-level neurocatalysts. Not just influencing mood, but forming chemical dependencies. Her body is learning to expect you. Kale stared. Is that dangerous? Potentially. For both of you. Long-term exposure may alter core neural pathways. We're seeing the first signs of cross-species imprinting. Kira took the news with unnerving calm. My people bond through challenge and proximity. Perhaps this was inevitable. But you didn't agree to imprinting, Kale said. You didn't sign up to chemically need me. She looked at him, eyes wide and fierce. I chose this. Even if the biology follows. And if it changes you. Then I evolve. That's what your people do, is it not? A summit was called. Not a normal one, this was a classified assembly of the Galactic Council's Hybrid Ethics Division. Representatives from 12 species sat in a circular chamber deep within the floating citadel orbiting Rho Centauri. Kale and Kira stood before them, not as diplomats, not as lovers, but as precedent. You risk fundamental alteration, said a Thorlanic arbiter, voice low and resonant. Yes, Kira said. You risk transmitting instability through your potential offspring. We are not currently planning reproduction, Kale said. But we've agreed to open consultation. Why? Asked a translucent-brained Numeri delegate. Why continue? Kira stepped forward. Because evolution does not ask permission. It simply moves. We are not anomaly. We are iteration. Kale added, you study us like we're unnatural. But nature made us both. And it's choosing to mix us now. Not in a lab. In life. There was silence. Then a single voice, fusion protocol authorized. Conditional. As they returned to the Silva promise, Kale reached for her hand. You sure? About you, she asked, wrapping her fingers around his. I am never sure. But I choose again. Every day. Even if I never stop trying to split the check. Especially then. Their final test came during an emergency on the outer moons of Haven Prime. An outpost hosting both Zidonian researchers and Terran engineers had lost contact with Central Command. The Silva promise was closest. Upon arrival, they found the base half-flooded from an environmental breach. Two factions, Terrans and Zidonians, were arguing over leadership. Neither side trusted the other to coordinate a rescue. Kale climbed a scaffolding tower. Kira stood below, arms crossed. They addressed the teams together. We don't need to agree on tradition, Kale called out, voice echoing. But we agree on survival. And survival, Kira added, requires cohesion. Not hierarchy. With joint direction, they evacuated 112 lives in under 2 hours. Neither faction had seen such seamless cooperation before. The incident report simply read. Command, hybrid. Result, success. Months later, in a garden aboard Silva Promise, Kale knelt, not with a ring, but with a shared neural clasp. A device used for deep memory linkage. Dangerous. Raw. Intimate. One mind, he said, if you want it. Kira smiled. Then let's learn what love means for our kind. And together, they activated fusion protocol, not just in tech, not just in law, but in each other. The equal offering. Kale adjusted the neural clasp at the base of his neck, heart thudding. It wasn't fear, it was gravity. The weight of something irreversible. Beside him, Kira stood in ceremonial robes of midnight silver, etched with fractal symbols of Zidonia's unity path. Her amber eyes met his. "Ready?" she asked. "As I'll ever be." The fusion protocol had sparked more than scientific interest, it ignited a movement. Councils, collectives, even rogue systems sent envoys to witness what came next. Kale and Kira weren't just individuals anymore. They were the bridge. The prototype of a new interspecies equilibrium. But not everyone wanted that. On the day of the final bonding ceremony, Silva Promise was surrounded by a delegation fleet. Peacekeepers. Observers. Silent watchers from a dozen sectors. Kale paced the observation deck. Kira meditated in a zero-gravity garden, floating amidst glowing vines. Dr. Silas Mendez appeared in a secure channel. "Your vitals are syncing naturally now," he said. "No artificial regulation needed." "Does that mean we're safe?" Kale asked. "It means," Silas smiled, "you've become something we can't fully explain." The ceremony was held in the Unity Chamber, a spherical hall designed to amplify resonance fields. Kale wore Terran ambassadorial blacks, with a single white streak at the collar, the mark of equal status. Kira's braids were woven with gold filament. As they stepped forward, they held a shared offering. A crystal. Half from Earth's mantle. Half from Zidonia's core. Fused under a gravity forge, it pulsed softly, two world hearts beating as one. "This," Kira said, voice clear and amplified, "is not submission. It is balance." "This is not surrender," Kale added. "It is synthesis." They placed the crystal into a conduit. Light surged. Frequencies harmonized. A wave of resonance swept through the chamber, triggering bio-readings in every attending delegate's implants. For a single moment, every being in the chamber felt what Kale and Kira had forged. Not just alliance. Understanding. Months passed. Xenopsychologists retired their experiments. Politicians signed the first interspecies rights accord. In fringe colonies, Zidonians and humans began founding joint settlements. Others followed. Not all accepted it. Some feared dilution. Others prophesied cultural extinction. Kale and Kira didn't argue. They just lived. On a quiet moon called Aridal 4, they built a small station of crystal and steel. They taught, mediated, explored. Children of different species visited, asked questions. "Is it true you fought over dinner?" one young hybrid girl asked. Kale grinned. "That's where it started." Kira laughed. "And we're still debating who cooks." On the eve of the new orbital cycle, they stood beneath a dome of transparent alloy. Meteors streaked across a violet sky. Kale took Kira's hand. "Think they'll remember us?" he asked. "They already do," she said. "Even if we never fit neatly into either world." Then we gave them a third path. Kale kissed her. Not out of passion alone, but recognition. Equal. Chosen. Real. Somewhere deep in the archive systems of both Earth and Zidonia, a shared record logged their story. Fusion complete. Stability, optimal. Anomaly status, transcended. The end.